When we think of space, we picture this vast, clean, pristine frontier, right? A total clean slate. Well, the reality is, we've kind of managed to bring one of our worst habits with us, our trash. Yup. What was once this huge, empty expanse is now facing a real environmental crisis. So let's get into it. Let's break down how we turned the final frontier into literally the world's highest landfill. So let's start with a number, over 1.1 million. That's how many pieces of debris bigger than a centimeter that we are actively tracking in orbit around our planet right now. We're talking more than a million pieces of junk, everything from tiny paint flecks to entire dead satellites, all whipping around the Earth at absolutely insane speeds. And here's the kicker. That's just the stuff we can actually see. And look, this isn't some abstract problem happening way up there anymore. It's starting to come down. I mean, just recently, a piece of metal from the International Space Station crashed right through the roof of a house in Florida. Wild, right? And it's not a one-off. We've had parts of a Falcon 9 rocket land near a warehouse in Poland. Another chunk from a Starlink satellite just showed up on a Canadian farm. Now, so far, nobody's been hurt. But these are some pretty clear warning signs. Okay, so how did we even get here? To really get it, we've got to stop thinking of space as this empty void. We need to see it for what it is now. A crowded, polluted, and surprisingly finite resource. It's basically a shared landfill, floating right above all of our heads. Now, this problem didn't just pop up overnight, but there were a few key moments that really accelerated the crisis. I mean, it all started pretty innocently back in '57 with Sputnik 1. But then came the game changers. In 2007, a Chinese anti-satellite test single-handedly created over 3,000 new trackable pieces of junk, just like that. Then, only 2 years later, a dead Russian satellite literally smashes into an active US one. That one event generated nearly a third of all the debris we were tracking at the time. And it's still happening. Just this year, a Chinese rocket broke apart, adding another 700-plus pieces of junk way up high. Junk that's going to stay in orbit for centuries. So what is all this stuff? Well, first off, the total weight is just staggering. Over 14,700 tons. And when you break down what it is, it gets really interesting. Yeah, a big chunk is what you'd expect, old dead satellites, spent rocket parts. But the real majority, that comes from fragmentation. We're talking about millions of tiny, absolutely lethal shards from all those explosions and collisions. And that is the most dangerous and unpredictable part of this whole mess.
And this leads us to the real reason why this is such a terrifying problem. See, it's not just about the junk that's already there. It's about the junk it's going to create. It's a concept that has a pretty ominous name, the Kessler syndrome.
Okay, so way back in 1978, this NASA scientist, Donald Kessler, he came up with this really chilling scenario. He basically said, look, if we get enough stuff orbiting the Earth, if the density gets high enough, a single collision could set off a runaway chain reaction. It's like cosmic dominoes. One collision creates a cloud of debris. That debris then hits other things, creating even more debris, which then causes even more collisions, and on it goes. It's a cascade that could just keep going, exponentially, until low Earth orbit becomes totally unusable. Let's walk through exactly how this would work. So, step 1, a collision. Imagine an old satellite hitting a leftover rocket body. Bam. Step 2, the impact. Remember, these things are moving at over 17,000 miles per hour. So the impact doesn't just dent them, it vaporizes them, shattering both objects into thousands of smaller fragments. Step 3. Now you have this brand new cloud of high-speed shrapnel, and that just dramatically jacks up the odds of hitting something else, which, of course, leads to step 4, the cascade. One collision leads to many, until that whole orbital lane is just saturated with lethal, fast-moving projectiles. And please, don't think this is some far-off sci-fi theory. Scientists have been sounding the alarm on this for decades. I mean, listen to this quote. It's from 2006. That was before some of the biggest debris-creating events we just talked about. Even back then, they were warning that we had already hit a tipping point, the point where collisions themselves would become the main source of new debris, creating junk faster than it could ever fall back to Earth and burn up. Okay, so a garbage dump hundreds of miles up. Why should you or I care? Well, because pretty much our entire modern world runs on the incredibly fragile infrastructure that is flying right through the middle of it all. Let's talk about the hidden costs, right here on Earth. Check out this number. In just a 6-month period, SpaceX's Starlink satellites had to perform almost 150,000 collision avoidance maneuvers. Think about that. That's hundreds of times every single day that our critical internet infrastructure has to literally dodge a bullet.
This is not a future problem. This is the constant daily reality of operating in space right now. And the risk isn't just to the satellites. A recent study found there is a 26% chance, that's a 1 in 4 chance, every single year that a big piece of uncontrolled rocket junk will fall back to Earth and pass right through busy commercial airspace. That forces aviation authorities into a terrible choice. Either you ground flights and cause massive disruptions, or you accept a small but very, very real risk to passenger planes. And the economic impact? Oh, it's very real. For instance, when a big space storm recently caused an outage in the GNSS network, that's the system that powers GPS, the estimated loss for farmers alone was over $500 million, just from that one outage. Now imagine a widespread satellite failure caused not by a storm, but by a cascade of debris. It would be so much worse. The point is, we are so much more dependent on this stuff than we realize. I mean, just look at this list. It's everything. The GPS in your car, in the planes we fly, the financial markets that need satellite timing for every single trade, the power grids that keep our lights on, agriculture, disaster monitoring, all our communications, all of it, every single thing relies on this fragile infrastructure in orbit. A major failure up there wouldn't just be an inconvenience. It would trigger a genuine systemic crisis down here. Okay, I know this all sounds pretty dire, and it is. But here's the good news. People are on it. We know about the problem, and a race is on to figure out how to solve it. This is where we get to the great orbital cleanup. So there are really two ways to tackle this. You've got prevention, and you've got the cure. Prevention is all about not making the mess worse. It means designing new satellites so they can deorbit themselves when they're done. Stop the bleeding. But then there's the cure, active debris removal. This is the really ambitious part. Actually going up there and capturing the junk that's already there, using things like giant nets, harpoons, or robotic arms. But yeah, cleaning up space is incredibly difficult. There are some massive hurdles. For starters, the technical challenge is insane. How do you even catch something that's tumbling wildly at 17,500 miles an hour? Then there's the financial question. Who's going to pay for this? Missions being developed by pioneers like Astroscale and ClearSpace are super expensive. And then it gets even trickier. Legally, under the 1967 Outer Space Treaty, every piece of junk belongs to the country that launched it, forever. You can't just grab another country's satellite without their permission. But maybe the biggest hurdle of all, the one that touches everything else, is geopolitical. And that brings us to the elephant in the room. Is a debris remover also a weapon? I mean, think about it. The technology is inherently dual use. A robot designed to go up and gently capture a piece of space junk? Well, it could just as easily be used to go up and grab an active, strategic satellite belonging to another country. And that one single question complicates everything when it comes to getting countries to work together on this. We started this whole space age with this incredible dream of reaching for the stars. But if we're not careful, we might end up creating a permanent barrier of our own making, literally boxing ourselves in. So the question we have to ask ourselves is a big one. Are we going to clean up our act? Or are we going to become prisoners on our own planet, trapped by the trash we left in the sky?